Well, talking of all things to do with the Labour Party, actually today is the opening day of the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. Sir Keir Starmer will lay out landmark plans to make the UK a global green energy superpower by just 2030 if he gets into government.
That's right. I mean, that really is quite soon, isn't it? Labour claim that their energy policy will save UK households £475 a year until 2030, and what's probably more important is create over 200,000 jobs.
Well, let's talk to political commentator and co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albie Amankona. Forgive me.
Get it right after all this while.
6 o'clock in the morning. Look, this is very interesting because what they're coming up with here is an absolute rebuttal against what we saw in the mini-budget, isn't it? And you wonder how quickly these plans have been thought through to get them into place, to be a very clear challenge to what the government has laid out.
I think the beginning of this Labour conference, for me, is very interesting. I mean, they've always heralded their green credentials more than the Conservative Party. So I'm not sure that this is a plan in response to Liz Truss's mini-budget. But I think the Conservative Party under Liz Truss has moved in a right-wing direction. So there is now clear blue water between the more centrist policies of Labour and the more economically conservative plans of the Conservative Party. I think what's interesting going into this conference, though, is that Labour have been ahead in the polls now for most of the year. So this is the first time in a very long time that some commentators might argue that Labour is entering conference season on the front foot.
I guess you have to ask, though, who's watching a Labour Party conference? Only Labour Party faithful, surely? I mean, the rest of us, most of us, don't watch a party conference, do we?
I would probably argue that most people in the country don't watch party conferences full
At all.
They're not that interesting for ordinary people. They are, however, very important for members of the party to really get people excited about the policy agenda that the parties, the Conservative Party, the Lib Dem conference, which was cancelled, or indeed the Labour Party, are going to bring forward. And, of course, we've got a general election in, 2 years' time now. So I think the two major parties, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, will really be trying to get their base excited and get people excited about their ideas.
What strikes me, again, about all of this, though, is the fact that there does seem to have been a turn of opinion against the green agenda, certainly amongst the older generation, who's saying we need to sort out the problems we've got today, first and foremost, and then we'll look at the green agenda. Now, the fact that Labour are taking that on head-on and saying it's the green agenda that will save us is quite an interesting positioning.
I agree, Stephen, completely. I do think that is a risk. I think there has certainly been, since the cost of living crisis and the energy crisis and the energy costs going up, not necessarily a backlash of the green agenda, but a rethinking of priorities, if you will. People probably won't mind so much now about fracking, about North Sea oil exploration. Those policies seem to have been quite popular that the Prime Minister has brought forward. So I think it's interesting that the Labour Party are really staking their entire political fortunes on the green agenda, giving savings to households and also creating 200,000 jobs.
And very much addressing the energy issue. I think we're all now convinced, aren't we, that something should have been done years ago and that the energy security is probably almost top priority, isn't it?
Absolutely, energy security is really important. But one of the things about the mini-budget that the Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng, brought out earlier on this week, which actually hasn't received much coverage at all, is, of course, the liberalisation of planning regulations for onshore wind energy. It's got almost no media coverage at all. That is actually also in the Conservatives' mini-budget. So actually, I'm not sure that there is that much difference between the plans of the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. However, the Labour Party are much happier to talk about the green agenda, but the Conservatives are not. But if you actually look at the finer detail of the policies, they're not actually that different.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because there also seems to be you can see the Labour going for a younger market, if you like, the younger voter. And there seems to be that very much a split between Labour going younger, Conservative, pitching at their traditional audience.
Yes, that is true, but I would caution the Conservatives at not just looking for that older audience, because the Conservative Party does need to appeal to younger voters to win. And if you look at policies around, I guess, a huge issue for young people, housing, which can be solved through planning reform, we've not really been hearing anything from the Conservatives about that. And that really is, in my opinion, a big risk to the party in the
Although,
future.
is it the front page of the Sunday Express this morning? The Chancellor has said, "You ain't seen nothing yet." They've got more plans
They do
in
have
store for the new year.
They do have more plans, and I think one of the things that gives me hope that perhaps this government might be prepared to do something serious about planning and serious about housing is they don't care about being unpopular. And now the issue with planning reform policies is that they are deeply unpopular with the Tory faithful, because people don't want to see, houses being built on the green fields of the home counties, for example. If a government is serious about solving the housing crisis, they will reform planning regulations. It will be unpopular, and then they'll get houses built. Let's see if that actually happens.
OK. Albie, thank you very much indeed.